We can do that. You know, I never knew my natural father. My biological father went to prison when I was just a year and a half old. You see, we're Italian, and he wanted to find an identity. In life, we always search for an identity. That's where peer pressure comes in. All the things that we do many times when we cut our hair, the clothes we wear, all these things many times are wrapped around what other people think of us. So we try to find an identity somewhere, either in music or media. We're supposed to get it from our family. We're supposed to get it from God Himself. But we didn't know that. We didn't grow up in the church. My father was searching, from what I was told, I never knew him, for a way to fit in. So if you watch the movies and stuff like that, they glamorize the mafia like it's something special. Let me tell you something. It's a filthy criminal organization that destroys its own people. But my father bought the lie. He manufactured his own heroin, he sold drugs, and at one point he was even contracted as a hitman, from what I'm told. Went into witness protection and disappeared. I never had a relationship with him. But the man that I knew as my father adopted my sister and I at a very young age, about 3 years old. He wanted my mother, so he took my sister and myself. But he never really liked me. He never really took to his son. You see, I didn't know I had a different father. This was the man who I look up to. And men in this room, I've said this every night, and I said every time I speak. Please hear my heart. Men in this room, you're the first glimpse that your children get of God the Father. And then we'll judge God by you. By how you treat your wife. By how you treat them. By how you treat others around you. And I thought, God must hate me because my father, the man who adopted me, he would torture me and beat on me and tie me to trees and lock me in basements for 2 and 3 days at a time for fun. He would get drunk and roll me up in a sleeping bag until I couldn't breathe, and I'd have to turn around as a little boy inside that sleeping bag to find that spot where the zipper doesn't close on a kid's sleeping bag, just so I could get a breath in. This is how I grew up. So I grew up with a rage and an anger, hating God, because I thought He had to be responsible for all these things. Folks, God doesn't cause harm to anyone. Men choose that way every single day. But I didn't know this, so I thought God must hate me. So by the time I was in the 7th grade, I wanted to find something, not just to find significance, folks, but I didn't want to feel pain anymore. Can you imagine as a 7th grader, maybe you felt that before? My life was so upside down, so ugly. The pressure was so great on me, I wanted anything to numb that pain. So I went to school. I bought a marijuana joint. It's always available, even for little kids. I went behind my house and I began to numb the pain. But that wasn't enough, and it took more and more as time went on. So by the time I became a young teenager, I started to do cocaine and then crack, and then I began to sell drugs just like my father. Man, I wasn't a bad kid. There's no bad kids. There's only bad decisions. And I was making lots and lots of bad choices. I didn't know any better. No one shared with me that God had a plan for my life. No one shared with me that I was created with a purpose and formed with a destiny. Maybe you don't realize in this room tonight that every one of you was crafted by God Himself. There's only one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And He took the time. You're not just cosmic dust that was accidentally thrown. He specifically formed you. Man, the color of your skin, your eyes, your DNA structure, your personality, everything about you is beautiful to Him. But that sin thing, our choices, comes in and messes us all up and keeps us separate from God. But no one told this to me. By the time I was a junior in high school, I was a school drug dealer. I lived on my own. Kids came to me to get me out of class to sell them drugs. My life was a train wreck. And I was taking them with me. I got in a lot of trouble, so I thought I'd join the military to get out of that trouble. The military is a great institution, but I put the weight and the burden of my sin and the pain of my life on the back of that organization. Now, for the first 6 months, if you've been in the military, you'll know this term. Man, I was ate up. And when I went through boot camp and stuff like that, when I spit shine my boots, everybody would take me in the bathroom at night and have me spit shine their boots. They'd have me make their bed. The hospital corners, you could bounce a cord of the ceiling off of my bed. And I'd snap to attention. The commanders would come by and they'd say, "This is the sharp truth." And in the beginning, I tried really hard. But after 6 months, the military let me down, not because they weren't great, because they couldn't meet the needs only God can. You see, inside your heart, there's a void, an emptiness, a place where God has to fit in. And you can shove anything you want in there. It'll never take 1 ounce of pain out of your life. It'll never fill the deepest desires of your heart that only God can. At one point, I started to lift weights. I went from 148 pounds to 345 pounds. And in those days, my waist wasn't any bigger than when I started lifting weights. A vicious substance called anabolic steroids was legal in Europe, and I would go to the doctor and get this garbage every week. And my body got bigger, and then my anger got bigger with it. And at one point, I took my NCOIC as my non-commissioned officer in charge, and I slammed him through my wall locker. They frown on that. I was in a lot of trouble. I was stationed in Charleston, South Carolina a short time after that, and I took my NCO in the back room again. I put my hands on him and told him I was going to kill him, and I was in a lot of trouble. They've been a court-martial me and thrown me out, but God had other plans. I slipped through the cracks. I got out, began to bounce bars, had a pro bodybuilding career, did all these different things. But at the end of my rope, at 2 o'clock in the morning in 1992, October, a broken down drug dealer, a thug, a fool. I'd thrown away everything in my life. In my house, I had a sawed-off Winchester shotgun, sawed off as far as you could saw that barrel off. I had about 2 nails on my living room wall because as a drug dealer, if you came in my house, I would have killed you. But that night, I didn't care about anybody else. I wanted to end my life. My roommate was gone. I'd been drinking all night. I removed this weapon off the wall. I got in the center of my living room. I put this weapon underneath my chin. 2 side-by-side barrels and a trigger, one behind the other in that trigger guard. And I wedged my big fat thumb in that trigger guard. If you know anything about that weapon, there's not much room. By the time my thumb was in that weapon, that first trigger was already moving. Folks, God loves you more than you can possibly comprehend. I passed out before I could pull the trigger. Praise God. This is if you pulled my hand out of that weapon. You ask anyone that knows weapons, that trigger should have gone off over and over again, both times. If I'd died on the floor that night, without forgiveness, without Jesus Christ, I'd have gone straight to hell, but God had other plans. You see, if you're in this building tonight, God has plans for your life. He's kept you around. He's moved everything in your life around. For this one moment in time, you may not realize it now, but in a few minutes you will. 3 weeks after that moment, I moved out of my town to a different part of the city out of embarrassment because this thing became known. I was outside washing my car. A Christian family came around the corner. They knew who I was. They knew my reputation. They knew I was a criminal. They didn't care. They invited me over to their house for Thanksgiving dinner. Man, I was drinking in their house. They had small children that had a filthy mouth. Man, they didn't beat me over the head with the Bible or tell me I was going to hell, even though that's where I was going. You know what they did? They showed me a love I'd never seen. First, they fed me. You want to make the big man happy? Feed him. They took care of me like I was one of their own. At first, I was irritated because I thought, they're not buying my game. I was trying my best to make them angry because that's what I did. Then after a couple more hours, I was confused. How could this be? Why now? And finally, at the end, I knew it was real. And I wanted what they had. I moved to Los Angeles from Northern California 3 days after meeting that family, and they sent me a letter that Jesus Christ was God, that He died in my place on the cross to pay my penalty for sin, and if I wanted freedom and forgiveness of sin, He would grant it to me. And that day, alone in my room, I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart. Not religion. I didn't start going to church. I didn't get baptized. I accepted the forgiveness of God. All that other stuff came later. That's all a byproduct of your relationship with Christ. You see, you can't enjoy the things of the Father's house until He adopts you. You can't open up the fridge and kick up your feet on the couch and watch TV in the house until you belong to that house. But now that I do, I enjoy all the wonderful things that God had planned for me from the beginning, and so can you. You'll see a lot of feats of strength demonstrated tonight. Some will make, and some we won't. But don't leave this building remembering concrete broken or the fire or any of those things. Leave here tonight with the knowledge that the walls in your heart are gone. God has moved in, and He will never, ever leave. God bless you. Here we go. Judgment, folks, one day, no matter how much you bench press or how many protein drinks you have or how healthy you are, your heart's going to stop. You will stand before God, Jesus Christ, and let me tell you, let me set the scene. It's Judgment Day. Jesus is speaking out of His own mouth. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he or she who does the will of my Father in heaven. So this is Judgment Day, and He's telling you, everybody that says they're Christians not going in. Many will say to me in that day, judgment day, Jesus still speaking, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? That meant they spoke boldly in his name. He didn't deny it. Have we not cast out demons in your name? They had. They had done these great things and done many wonders in your name. Jesus never denied that they did any of those things. They had done them all. And then this is his response to those very religious people. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So folks, there's a day coming where we will stand before one of two judgment seats, one of two thrones. And the only thing that's going to determine once you get past that wall is your name is in the Lamb's book.